All right, welcome back to the Because We Can podcast. We're super excited to have a very special guest with us today. This is going to be another episode of the Major Consideration series. And Chris, why don't you introduce our guest?
Sure. So Rocco and I have known each other for a while. This is the first time Rocco and Aiden are meeting, so looking forward to this. This is going to be good. So Rocco Giegerich is a biomedical science and Spanish double major and health, ethics, and spirituality minor at Xavier University in Cincinnati, Ohio. His hobbies include crossword puzzles, lacrosse, swimming, running, and working in EMS. So he's had an interest in medical studies since he was 3 after receiving emergency surgery on his broken elbow. His interest turned into a passion that has influenced his career path, and he is on track to attend medical school and become a physician. Although Rocco is unsure what specialty he wants to pursue, he finds great interest in pediatrics, particularly in fields of orthopedics and oncology. All right. So that's a little bit about Rocco, and we're just going to hop right into this. So tell us about your high school experience, where you went, and just overall.
Okay.
General.
So if you guys are from the area, it's a school called Camden Catholic. Chris and I actually went to the same high school. I originally just chose to go there because both my siblings went there, or my older siblings went there, and they enjoyed it. And then I shadowed, did everything like that, and I also enjoyed it. And so started going there, and my high school experience was very fast-paced, kind of. Also just like very tiring, but very rewarding at the same time. So I was consistently taking like a lot of classes, and I took a lot of the upper level classes. So because I enjoyed learning, I have always been that way, but I didn't really realize that until I was kind of in high school and I started taking these classes that like everyone else in my class was like, oh, I hate this, blah, blah, blah. Like Chris mentioned the physics class that we had, and he was like, yeah, it wasn't class, but like I enjoyed that class.
Wow,
I didn't enjoy it that much, but I enjoyed it enough to the point where like I tolerated it. Whereas like most people in the class hated it.
Yeah, that says a lot for sure.
Yeah. And so I have just like always kind of liked learning. And so in high school, I tried to get as much out of it as I possibly could. I also am like very future, like goal driven. And so I've always had this, most of high school, I had this idea in my head that I was going to go to Princeton because my grandma worked there. And so like even freshman year, I was like, I got to get like straight A's every single year to go to Princeton, blah, blah, blah. Like I was so focused on that.
Wow.
As I started to mature and started the actual college process, I realized that, I didn't necessarily want to go to an Ivy League, even if I could get into one. And so I still applied because Princeton had been my dream for a while.
Yeah.
But I realized that trying to get those straight A's was not just for Princeton. It was also just for my personal benefit and for the sake of learning and for, it did help with college and everything like that. But we weren't allowed to take APs till junior and senior year. So I took 3 APs junior year, 3 APs senior year. And I enjoyed most of them. I enjoyed a lot of my other classes too, not just the APs. But high school was very tiring for me, which I didn't really realize until my junior and senior year. I was also a full-time swimmer. I was trying to swim in college for the first half of high school and then realized that was not what I was going to do after that. So I was swimming twice a day. I was taking these honors and AP classes. I was constantly exhausted. Had a spurt of stomach issues that I realized were all linked to stress. And after I quit swimming, they like all went away. And I was like, like it was just stress related this whole time. So I didn't realize I didn't realize throughout high school that I was putting a lot of stress on myself, but because I was enjoying a lot of it. And so I was enjoying these classes and always trying to like better myself or one up myself from like the last grade I got on the test or what I was doing. But like I'm kind of putting a negative light on it. Like I really enjoyed high school. When we were leaving, I was so sad to go. Like I loved Camden Catholic. I loved everyone there. I loved all most of the teachers I had.
Oh man.
But yeah, and so it was really good. And I feel extremely. I just finished my first year of college, and I have felt extremely prepared for it. Especially relative to some of my friends who have come. Everyone comes from different backgrounds, but I have noticed that my educational background from Camden Catholic has helped me a ton with just the workload part one, we were just talking about before this how like I have a bunch of free time now, which or not a bunch, but I have free time, which is something I did not ever have in high school. And so I'm able to manage my time because of that. I'm able to get the most out of classes while like, even if it's a lot of work, I'm just like I get through it while also learning and not just kind of, zoning out and trying to do all the work. But yeah, high school was very good to me. I did end up graduating valedictorian, which was, I didn't realize that was even like on the horizons until beginning of senior year when we started doing college applications, and they were like, oh yeah, like you're number one. And I was like, like I guess I actually have to like finish out the year then, try for this.
Yeah.
So all the stress and the tiredness and everything like that did pay off in the end. Not even just getting the title of valedictorian or like graduating and getting the awards, stuff like that, but just with what I want to do, I found I am very well prepared to take the next steps, not only for college but also for what I want to do in my future, because I was talking about medical school. And because I came in with a lot of AP credits, I was able to add on that Spanish double major. I was able to test out of general chemistry, and I took orgo for a semester, which has been a huge benefit because now I have a lot of space up in my schedule.
Yeah.
And so it was hard, high school. It was very enjoyable at the same time, and it was definitely rewarding. And so I don't regret anything that I did, really, except for maybe crazy stress myself out while I was swimming twice a day, everything like that.
How did the swimming schedule work? How did you swim twice a day?
I was swimming for Camden Catholic. So I say swim twice a day, but I don't mean like getting up at 5 a.m. and going to do crazy hard practice and then like going back for weightlifting afterwards, which some clubs do. I was swimming for Camden Catholic, which was, like an hour-long practice. It was relatively introductory level because not a lot of kids on the team had swam before. But then after that, I'd drive directly to my pool or my club team, which was the actual training and like the hard practice. And so I'd get out of the pool, dry off, get my car, drive back to Medford, where I'm from, or I'm from Tabernacle, but I swim in Medford. So drive 45 minutes back there and then get in the pool there and swim. And I kind of hated it, but I was like, no, I got to swim in college. Like, this is what I got to do to get better. And it ended up just actually putting me back because I was just tired all the time. And so I was never able to reach full capacity athletically because I was so exhausted and expending a lot of energy on school. And just the commute also tired me because I had a 45-minute commute every day, which was hard. But yeah, so I didn't do that for all that long. I did a couple times a week during sophomore year, and then COVID hit, and I had a chance to reset and realized I might not actually want to pursue swimming in college. And so it was, in a way, that it was good I had that break, because I had some mental clarity and realized that swimming was not the path for me in college, but it was still worthwhile at the time. So
Yeah.
So I know that you applied to a lot of schools. You got into some programs. Why don't you talk about the different schools that you applied to and the programs?
Okay.
And your ultimate decision to attend Xavier.
So when I first started the college application process, I was your stereotypical honors kid. Like, I need to get an Ivy League. I need to do Princeton, Yale, Harvard, Penn, blah, blah, blah. And basically every other day I was looking up like online best pre-med schools. And like, I was like, I got to get into one of these. Like, there's the whole, every Ivy League. Johns Hopkins was on there. Notre Dame was on there. And so I still did apply to a lot of those schools because, I had the chance and I did have the marks to possibly get into one. But in the meantime, you have to look for safety schools because even if you are highly qualified for all those schools, you still might not get in, which I ended up happening to me. I applied to Harvard just for kicks. I did not want to go to Harvard, but I was like, this is my one chance to apply to Harvard. And then I applied to Princeton, which was one of my top schools because my grandma worked there. And so I kind of grew up going to the football games and being on campus. Ended up getting waitlisted at Princeton, which was still a good accomplishment. I was proud of myself for that. But, no one really backs down an offer from Princeton or denies an offer from Princeton. So there was not a lot of leeway for the wait list. So I kind of knew I wasn't going to get in there. I applied to Johns Hopkins. I got denied from there. Applied to Yale. Got denied from there. I got denied from Harvard. I'd say probably the most like stereotypical prestigious school I applied to and got in was Notre Dame. And so I got in there. It unfortunately was 70,000, I think, with financial aid.
Wow.
And scholarships. And so
That's
I was
ridiculous.
not able to go there. But even though I was like kind of considering Notre Dame, regardless of the price, if I had been comparing Notre Dame and Xavier, I still would have chose Xavier, which I'll get into in a second. And then some other ones. I applied to a couple of BSMD programs, which is Bachelor of Science medical degree, where if you get in, you automatically gain admission to that school's medical school after you graduate from undergrad. I applied to the one in Rutgers, Newark. I got denied from that. These are like highly competitive programs where it's like less than 1% acceptance rates.
Wow.
And so I got into, or no, sorry, I did not get into the Rutgers one. And then I also applied to one with Stony Brook University in New York, and I got into their honors program, which was pretty highly competitive, but I did not get into their BSMD program. And then I got into a BSMD type program at Seton Hall, where you weren't guaranteed admission into the med school, but you were guaranteed an interview, which would highly increase your chances of admission, which was good. And so I toured Seton Hall. That was definitely a consideration on my list. I got into their Leadership Institute, which was another cool thing that they had. But I ended up, like, I didn't get that feeling at Seton Hall that was home for me. And so, and another thing that happened is Xavier was not on my list at all, like starting the college search. And then I just got a random mailing from them one day. And it was like, we have a 93% medical school placement rate. Wow. And so I was like, that seems high. Like, and I looked it up, and the average medical school placement rate across the nation is 60%. So only 6% of applicants actually get in. So Xavier putting up 93%, and like over the last 5 years, it was 85%, I think, was like, wow. Like, so just that one statistic kind of put it on my radar. And I started doing more research about it. They offered to put me up in a hotel and bring me to an honors, like a luncheon type thing, and gave me a tour of the school during the summer going into senior year. And so I did that. And I really, really enjoyed it. And even without students there, even on a rainy day, I hate rain. Rain ruins my mood. But even on a rainy day, I was like, wow, I love this. And like, I was in a good mood. And so that was the first school I toured. And then after that, every school I went to, I was just like, I don't like it as much as Xavier. Like, Xavier has this, Xavier has that. And so I was comparing everyone subconsciously, like, never realized I was comparing everyone back to Xavier. And so it was like the welcoming environment at Xavier. It was the pre-med statistics and just the general pre-med strength that they have. And then also just that fact that every other school I looked at was never good enough compared to Xavier. I ultimately decided that was definitely where it was home for me. And I've found that was the right choice over the past couple months, or past semester, past year. And because I definitely feel at home, and I definitely really enjoy being there and everything that it has to offer. And the academics are very good. I've never felt like I'm succeeding so much in academics than I have at Xavier. And it's not succeeding like grade wise. It's succeeding in that, like, I feel my brain being challenged, and like I wrote a 20-page theology paper, just like, and at the end of it, I just like sat there and I was like, I didn't know I could do that. Like, I would not have been able to do that before I went to Xavier. And so that's how I came to the decision, and that ended up being the right decision, which I know like is not always the way it works out, but I'm very grateful that it worked out for me that way. Yeah, and that's kind of how it went.
That's awesome. And so Xavier's pretty far, right? Like you were saying, It's about 10 hours.
Yeah.
So how was that transition, like coming from home to then moving so far away and getting adjusted while also taking on, I'm sure what was pretty difficult course load?
Mm-hmm. So it was more difficult than I thought. I am lucky enough to come from a very strong family home life. And so I'm one of 6 kids. So I'm used to just having siblings around 24/7, which could get annoying at times, but also is very great, or is very rewarding. And so when I was going to Xavier, I was like, yeah, like I'm an independent like person. I was ready to go to college since like sophomore year of high school, I felt like. And so I was like, yeah, this is gonna be great. Moved out there, and orientation was a lot of fun. They kept you occupied. You were meeting people left and right, and couldn't remember anyone's name. And then everything kind of settled down, and I started settling into classes, and there was just like that overwhelming feeling of like, wow, like I didn't realize that like I missed my family this much, because you don't really realize it until you're 10 hours away, and then it seems a lot further than it did when you looked it up on the map. Mm-hmm. And so it was hard at times. There was a couple nights where I was just like, didn't really want to do work, but like obviously I had to. But didn't really want to do work or had no motivation because I was just like kind of sad because I was homesick. My girlfriend's here. I've been dating her for 3.5 years now. And so she was still back here, and that made it extra hard. But then slowly I started to get involved in activities at Xavier. I started to meet a lot of people. I kind of found my group. And after about a month or two, I started to feel like I was like fully settled in. And so it took time, but it was definitely worthwhile to stay there and to let the time pass by, or not let time pass by, but to give yourself the time to settle in. because after a couple months, I definitely felt like I was at home. Thanksgiving came around like not even 3 months after school started, and I was doing like a Friendsgiving with all my friends. We were stealing food from the dining hall and bringing it to the basement and my dorm, and like, or not stealing it. We had the food and we had the green boxes, but we took a large amount of potato salad. The person just filled it and they came back and they're like, "Where'd my potato salad go?"
That's good.
But yeah, and then even after that, like my older siblings both told me you don't find your true friends in college until your second year, because that's after everyone's kind of the initial like I don't know, like haziness of going to college, or like the initial like confusion of everything wears off, and you finally are like there and you start to find your people. So I am still very close with my friends from orientation, but I also started to get really close with some of my other friends who I've started to connect with because of what we do on campus, that where we relate to. I'm sure kind of like how you guys connected. And so it took, it still continued, that process of getting settled in has continued. And I didn't really feel like I was fully 100% settled in until like 2 months before school ended. But even then it was like, after a month or two, I felt like I was settled in enough where I was still comfortable, even though I was a little bit homesick still at times. I still get homesick occasionally because, you miss your family or I miss my family when I'm 10 hours away.
Yeah.
And so it was definitely a process. There were nights where I did not want to do work, or like didn't really have motivation, but you just gotta, kind of buckle down those nights. And even if you're not really like putting 100% into it, you gotta at least put 80% or 90%, enough to care about it, but not so much where it's like, wow, I really, really, really hate this. So it was definitely hard, but there's, the next day you'd sleep it off and you'd be a little bit better the next day. And then if someone else came up, you just give it a couple days and it would eventually wear off, or you talk to your friends, or, I talked to my advisor. We just had like the check-in the first couple weeks after school started. And, I told her, I was like, yeah, I'm homesick. And even just that simple, like explaining to her that I'm homesick helped a lot to get it off my chest. And so, it helped with the transition, and the transition was a little bit more difficult than I anticipated, but it was not impossible, because you just got to start to find your people and let yourself have that time and not feel pressured to like have best friends immediately, which I also kind of found myself doing. But it's not healthy, because then you're like, wow, you're not finding any meaning in any of the relationships you have, because you expect it to be just like the ones you had at home that have been friends for 4, 5, 7, or 8 years, however long we've been friends for. And so you just gotta, I found that you have to be patient. So that was probably my biggest takeaway.
Did you know anyone going into Xavier?
No. Well,
Wow.
Actually, one person from our middle school. I don't know if you remember her.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, so I wasn't friends with her. She was just my brother's grade. But I knew of her. And so that was like one person I kind of knew of coming in. But besides that, didn't know anyone. I had been in my contact with my roommate. We just went random. Been in contact with him like twice before the school year started, just to discuss like who was bringing the rug and who was bringing a microwave. But
That's
then,
kind of intimidating.
Yeah. He also was horrible over text. I was like, oh gosh, like what did I get myself into going random? But then we ended up being like really good friends, so it worked out. I was like, this is bad. But yeah, didn't know anyone going into it, which definitely was a challenge. But that made it easier to make friends, because I was not just kind of stuck to one group, or like shielding myself from everyone else.
Totally.
So.
And you mentioned that one of the ways that you made friends was by doing different activities, right?
Yeah. So there's a couple ones I got involved with almost immediately. The one was at church. I was raised Roman Catholic, and so I would go to the Sunday Mass. We have a chapel on campus. And so I started reading at Mass and got to know a couple people through that. I didn't really make any like close friends, but I like made acquaintances kind of through that. But even just by going to Mass, I started finding a couple of friends, and I would sit with them weekly, and we'd go get dinner afterwards in the cafeteria. And then I was friends with my orientation group, which was a lot of fun, and also just kind of made it easy to have at least some people like to talk to or to hang out with, even those first couple weeks. And so I just got lucky with that. A lot of people from orientation don't stay together. But then I also just got close with a lot of people from my classes, just because you're spending a lot of time with them. You talk to them inadvertently through just the class. And then that eventually kind of morphed into, talking outside of class, or as we're walking out of the classroom to our next classes,
Exactly, yeah.
You talk to there in just those 15 or not even 15 minutes. You can get across the whole campus of Xavier in like 5. But like in those 2-minute conversations after class, I was finding myself becoming friends with these people that were in my classes. And so then you start to hang out with them afterwards. You got to make that effort to try and hang out with people outside of class. And And then like other activities, we have this one program at Xavier called companion groups where it's exactly what it sounds like. You just go and you have companions. You go hang out for once a week for an hour and just kind of talk about the week. We do this thing called high-low buffalo where it's like the high of your week, the low of your week, and the buffalo, which is just like a random thing from your week. And so I got close to some people through that. I joined club swimming, which helped me a lot. And then I did that first semester, then joined club lacrosse for second semester and made a lot of friends through that because I found that sports, I'm a sports person, so I found that helps a lot. And then also for like not sports things, like, there's the other things like companion groups. I did a weekly service group called Exchange, and I made some friends through that because, you're going spending 2 hours a week with these people doing service. And so that kind of forms a bond with you or between you and other people. Mm-hmm. And so it was just random things like that. It doesn't have to be anything like crazy intellectual or like companion group. Like you have to be companions. Mm-hmm. Like it can literally just be like a book club or like, I don't know, something like that. There's a lot of random clubs, but that definitely helped with just finding people. So
we met during orientation, first day.
Okay.
Before the semester even started, right?
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was like, I was like not supposed to be there. And I just, I went to the wrong orientation day.
I never heard this story before.
I don't think anyone has. But yeah, I went to the wrong orientation day. And then I met him and some other engineers. Like it was like the engineers honors kids.
Yeah.
And then I just was not supposed to be there. But that's how I met him and our good friend Abi. We had him on the show too.
Okay.
But yeah.
So yeah, lucky that worked out.
Yeah, it was
definitely
just natural connections is the way to go for sure. Don't force anything.
Yeah, that's something I found myself trying to force things all the time, and I would just be like, yeah, like then I'd like think about it after, like I would not even just hang out with someone, but just like think about trying to like force this like best friend relationship with like someone else, and it was like you can't force friendship, you can't force like relationships with people, and so it's like it's gonna happen naturally, and it's annoying how slow it happens. Sometimes some people you click with immediately, but you just gotta give it time to kind of develop and to flourish because you're not gonna create a lifelong friendship after just like a single conversation walking out of class. So it may turn into that, but it's not gonna immediately be like that connection that you might have with some old time friends that you've known forever. So
yeah, you got it.
Okay, talk to us about your first year classes, like the hard ones, some of the ones that interest you the most.
Okay.
Just go through your class list from the first year.
I gotta see if I can remember them. All right. So first semester, it's mostly just the core classes. Xavier has a core where it's like, I think a lot of schools have this, but Xavier's a liberal arts college, and so you have to take like philosophy, reading, writing, history, those kind of things. So first semester, theology is another big one. First semester, I took my freshman theology class, which every freshman has to take. That one I did take was honors, so it's a little bit more writing intensive. It's a little more reading intensive. This particular class was a lot more writing intensive and a lot more reading intensive. Yeah, most classes I had, it was like maybe an hour of work like every other night, or like 2 hours of work every other night, besides some of the harder ones like OChem. But I like theology, I was reading anywhere between 30 to 50 pages a night.
Wow.
And then I'd have to spend like an hour writing a response to everything that had like 6 to 7 questions we'd respond to.
Wow.
And under normal circumstances, I would hate that for a class, but I really, really found myself enjoying theology, because I was always like raised in the Roman Catholic tradition where it was like, or a lot of what I was taught through middle school and through high school was a lot of just like the rules of the church or like just regulations and like, history of the faith and stuff like that. But then theology was a chance to explore faith from an intellectual perspective, which was something I'd never done before. And so I really, really enjoyed that and really found myself enjoying the readings, even though there were some nights where I just like fell asleep reading or like I did not want to finish it. But I'll get back to that in a second. I'll go through the rest of my courses.
Okay.
But theology played an important impact on me with my minor decision and everything else. I also took calculus to get my math requirement out of the way for my major, because I'm a biomedical sciences major, so we all have to take, I think you only have to take like the introductory level math course, but I had just taken AP calculus in high school and wasn't all that strong with it, and so I decided to take calculus again to try and get a better foundation with it. So I did that and really enjoyed that. I was with my roommate who was a math major at the time, and him and I would just like, we sat next to each other in class. We had a good student-teacher relationship with the professor. And so it was a lot of fun because it was a smaller class and we would just kind of like goof around while solving math problems.
That sounds great.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
I wish.
And then I took Organic Chemistry 1 and the Organic Chemistry 1 lab. Everyone, so I got a call from the chair of the chemistry department because they emailed me and they were like, you have these credits from high school from APs. Do you want to test out of bio or chemistry? And I was like, like I really enjoyed AP chemistry, and had a really strong foundation in it because of my teacher in high school, who taught us at an above college level. So I was like very prepared for chemistry in college, and so I was like, you know what, like I'm gonna test into Orgo, and Orgo is organic chemistry. I don't, for people listening who don't know what that is, but OChem and Orgo are organic chemistry. And organic chemistry has a reputation for being one of the weed out courses in the pre-med majors or the science majors because it's typically a very hard class. So I get a call from the chair of the chemistry department this summer going into college, so last summer. And he was like, hey, like I saw that you're taking organic chemistry. I want to test into it. And he was basically tried to convince me not to do that. And he was like, a lot of the freshmen find themselves like not really having the study groups that have already been established from the sophomores who were in the same classes with these people like freshman year. It's a different pace than it was in high school. And so some people forgot things from like AP chemistry, things that would have been covered in Gen Chem in college, but that weren't really covered in AP Chem. But I was kind of persistent and a little bit stubborn. And I was like, all right, I'm going to prove this guy wrong now because like you said, I can't do organic chemistry. Ended up taking it. It was one of my favorite classes, if not my favorite class throughout the first semester. I also was just very lucky that Xavier has a very strong organic chemistry department. And so the professors helped me a lot. I also would spend a lot of time on my own trying to get familiar with it, use YouTube, use the resources they give. And so through like all those different combinations, I also ended up meeting people from my study group that the chair of the chemistry department said I would not find. I met people like the first day because the girl sitting in front of me, who's one of my good friends now, turned around and it was like, we were just like talking or like chatting before class started. And she found out I was a freshman and she was like, all right, like we'll take you in. And I was like, okay.
There you go.
That's one way to do it.
Yeah. So I like kind of had a group through that. Even though I'm kind of a lone wolf when I study, I don't love studying with people. And I ended up doing well in the class. I think I had a 99 first semester.
Wow. Nice.
Which I really liked, I liked the grade, but I really liked the class. And I found myself, not just sitting down to do my homework and like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I have to do this. But I just really enjoyed like writing out the molecules and mechanisms of the reaction and like which steps can be next in the reaction and everything like that. And so I was very glad with my decision to test into Orgo. And then same thing happened this past semester. I took Orgo 2, which my professor was actually much better than my first semester professor. And so I was learning a lot more and also being challenged a lot more. And I really enjoyed that. And so, even though I had to devote a lot of time to it, like, you have to do for a lot of those more challenging coursework heavy classes, I was definitely enjoying it. And so I ended up finishing with similar marks. I actually think I had 103 in Orgo 2. And so, which like,
for those
I did
of
not
you who
expect.
do not know, that is absolutely cool.
I didn't expect that at all. Like I was like, oh, okay, like I'm doing well in the class. Like there's a lot of extra credit opportunities if you just put in extra work. I created a parody to Mr. Brightside, but about organic chemistry. It's on YouTube if you want to go find it somewhere.
I do want to listen to that. We will find it.
Coming out of my class and I've been doing not fine. Gotta work hard because I want an A.
It started out with a test. How did it end up like this? It was only a test. It was only a test.
And that sounds like an extra credit opportunity because the professor knew. He was like, this is a hard class. So like he was doing everything he could do, not hand us extra credit, but to make us actually work for it. And so I did that. I did all the homeworks. I spent significant time in the library. I would go to the library most mornings for 3 to 4 hours. And I'd usually do like chemistry problems for at least 2 of those hours. Maybe not every day, but most days. And so just because that's the kind of time it required.
And you would study after, like in the afternoon or evening as well?
Not really, no.
Okay.
They always tell you, like, you need to study, like, everything you learn that day, you need to study late at night. Like, practically no one, or practicality-wise, like, no one really has that time. And if you do, that's great. You have a great time management schedule. But, like,
Or they listen to our episode about time management.
Right, yeah. But I wouldn't study for chemistry every single day, but I'd usually do the homeworks that we had most days. There was always practice problems. There was an abundance of practice problems that my professor would give us. And so
That's good.
I wouldn't just sit down and read the book. I would go do practice problems for, especially like the week before an exam or something. I would do practice problems for like the 5 days leading up to it. And make sure I not only knew what everything was going into it, but I make sure I could just do it without even thinking about it. And so you had to get to that point. Because organic chemistry is a little bit different than everything else, where like you kind of have to, you can't really think about it because there's just like so much information that you just need to practice until it's kind of like, it's just there in your brain. Like it's like, there's not really thinking involved.
Have you ever felt unprepared for one of those exams?
Yeah, like there was one exam particularly where I was like, I felt like I didn't know as much going into it because I had last minute decided I was going to be coming home for the weekend. I flew home for the weekend because it was my little brother's confirmation and he really wanted me to be there. And so I had to take the test a day earlier than anticipated. And I was cramming the night before until 3 a.m., which was something I had not done for any of the other courses or any of the other exams. So I definitely felt less prepared going into that. But regardless, still was like, okay, like I practiced enough to the point where even if I don't know every single thing, I know like what should come next. Like I know at least like the bare minimum, the general overview, even if I don't know like some of the nitpicky, like this atom goes here, this atom goes here. And so I still ended up getting a fine grade on that exam. And so it was that practice that helped me kind of like even not feeling super prepared for it, go into that exam and be prepared enough where I got marks on the exam that I was satisfied with. So there aren't a lot of classes that you can do that with because like history is not like you can practice history. Like that's kind of a read and like you remember and everything like that. You can practice with flashcards like dates and everything or people. But like math, chemistry, a lot of like the numerical or like statistical classes, you just got to practice. I found myself doing that for bio too, and that helped a lot. So speaking of which, bio was another class I took, general biology. I had taken AP Bio in high school, so it was not a hard class necessarily for me because I had already taken it in a way in high school, and I did the lab for that. And then, what else did I take? Geology, calculus, chemistry, bio. There's one I'm missing. I cannot remember what it was.
Reading.
No.
Maybe I don't know how I would know, but
yeah, I'm like I'm trying to rack my
core
brain.
class, like
yeah, I think it was a core class. I don't remember.
Research.
No, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I took one other class. I think it was one of the core classes though.
Got it.
Maybe I didn't know. I don't know.
So how many classes in your first year? How many was that?
So first year. Oh gosh, how many was it? It was I took 17 credit hours my first semester.
Okay.
So that was 5 classes. And then second semester, I ended up only taking 14. I forget why. I think I had to drop a class. But I took my first year seminar that time, which I decided to go completely different than anything I've learned. And I went financial market manias and bubbles, which you learned about like the crash of financial markets and stuff like that, which was super interesting. One of my favorite classes second semester because like I hadn't learned anything about the stock market or anything like that through my science classes or through theology classes. And so that was a good kind of change of pace, and I really enjoyed that and learned a lot. I took a philosophy class. That was a core requirement for everyone. I don't love philosophy. It's cool, but it's,
too much thinking.
Not even that. It's just like strange thinking. Unless for some of it. Some of it was really interesting, but and then what else? I took Orgo 2. I took Bio 2, the labs for both of those. And I think that might have been it because I only took 14 credit hours. And so that's the 4 classes times 3 for each credit. Yeah. So that was the only courses I took for that. Bio 2 was very similar to Bio 1, just like taught a little bit differently, and it was different material. Like it was ecology and stuff like that, and evolution instead of like anatomy and molecular biology, like it was in first semester.
That stupid Krebs cycle.
Krebs cycle. Yeah,
Oh, man.
yeah.
I never thought I would hear that again. AP Bio junior year, that got me messed up. I don't really think about that.
Yeah.
That's not fun.
That's a toughie. But I really enjoyed the course I had freshman year. There weren't a lot of them where I kind of like, or I don't know if there were any where I really like dreaded going into it, except for maybe like bio second semester where it was just a straight up lecture and like I just sat there and like took notes for an hour and 15 minutes like. And my professor was obsessed with birds, so he would just like put birds and pictures of birds on the slideshow, and like I just sit there and be like, "What am I supposed to write down?" Like I know,
Red,
yeah,
yellow,
peacock, like sparrow.
That's funny.
But even that class, like there was a lot of days where I really enjoyed it. There's just those couple of days where I was like, I don't want to go sit down for an hour and 15 minutes and just take notes for that long. But besides that, I really enjoyed a lot of them. And so jumping back to theology, what I really liked about theology was even though it was the most work I was doing for any class I was taking, even like Orgo, which was supposed to be the most work I took, I was just enjoying all of it, or most of it. And I realized through that I wanted to do something related to theology, but also related to medicine, for a minor. And so I decided to add on this new minor that Xavier added this year, which is called health ethics and spirituality. And it's the interface of spirituality, particularly the Jesuit faith, because that's what Xavier's a Jesuit school, which is a branch of Catholicism. And so it's taking spirituality and the understanding of human connection and human, like all of human interconnectivity, and pairing that with medicine and how you're going to treat patients. And so I'll be taking classes like medical racism, medical ethics, stuff like that, where you're not just looking at the science of it, you're looking at kind of the human to human interaction of medicine, and you're using spirituality to kind of inform like what kind of doctor, what kind of nurse, what kind of physician assistant you're going to be. And so I haven't really taken any courses for that particular minor yet, because I got to get through all my core courses first, and I'll start taking those later on. But I'm very, very excited for all those, because it's the two things I'm most interested in, and I get to pair them. So I'm very excited about that. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about why you want to go into medicine.
Okay, so got to go all the way back to when I was 3. Mm-hmm. My brother left his skateboard on the driveway, and I was 3, so I didn't know how skateboards worked, and so I stood on it, started rolling down the driveway, and it went out from under my feet, and I ended up snapping my elbow in half, which I don't know if you guys can see, but I have the pins here still from the surgery.
Oh, wow. I see.
Or not the pins, that's where the pins were.
Yeah.
But I was taken to the hospital in the ambulance, and I had emergency surgery to repair it because it was split into 2 pieces. And even at 3 years old, I was sitting in that ambulance and I was like, wow, this is really cool. Like, I just thought it was, for some random reason, like I thought the ambulance was really cool. I thought it was so cool afterwards that like I had these whole marks in my, I'd show everyone that I met, I have these pin marks in my elbow. And I was like, I just thought it was cool from like that very innocent child perspective, that like you could take something that was a human body part that was split in 2 and like put it back together with medicine. And so that was just kind of like an interest, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And even since like throughout middle school, or throughout like elementary school and middle school, I was like, yeah, I think I want to be a doctor. Like I want to be an orthopedic surgeon, because that's who fixed my elbow. And then, I wasn't always dead set on that. There was a point in time where I was like, oh, I'm going to become a priest. Like that did not go into fruition at all. But,
I remember that.
Yeah. But then I always kind of found my way back to medicine. And so, and I really enjoyed science courses. I really enjoyed, science courses. There wasn't really like a lot of differentiation between science courses in middle school, but I always liked them no matter what was happening, and particularly anatomy. And so it just kind of like kept growing and growing and growing. And then in in high school, I kind of realized that was definitely what I wanted to do with my life. Because I wanted, one of my biggest things too, I wrote a college essay about this. One of my greatest fears was working a 9-to-5 job, because I'm just the type of person that like needs fast-paced environment, like go, everything like that. And I also need a job where I'm going to feel like I'm doing something important, or like I have a purpose. And so, a lot of 9-to-5 jobs can do that. Like, I'm not saying 9-to-5 jobs can't do that, but for me, it just seemed very clear that I had a love for medicine. I love science. I loved anatomy. I had a deep desire to care for people. And then I also wanted something that had a ton of purpose. And so it just seemed very clear to me that medical school was the route I should go. And I kept my horizons open, or my borders open kind of for most of high school. And I was like, I'm not completely dead set on this. And I still kept my borders open through the first semester of college. Because a lot of people who think they're going to medical school end up changing their mind. Yeah. But everything that I did ended up just reaffirming that I want to do medicine and I want to go into medicine. And actually that finance class that I took was like kind of like the seal like on that I definitely want to do medicine, because it was super fascinating. I love talking about it, but we would talk about all these crazy stories of people like doing wild, like foolish things with their money and doing all this, and their entire lives are dedicated to just like the pursuit of money. And it was like a cool story to hear about, but if I tried to insert that into my plan for my life, it just never seemed to work, because I was like, I don't want to spend my entire life just chasing, this thing that humans just put a value on. I want to actually do something meaningful with my life where I will be able to like help people and use the talents that I have to kind of give back to other people. And so that finance class made me realize like I definitely want to go into medicine, even though I kind of knew that already. It was the final seal on it. So yeah, I'm trying to think of what else. That's kind of just like the general story. Like it just started when I was 3 and I've never really looked back. I like geek out every time I go into a hospital. I'm working as an EMT right now. I actually just walked in like with my EMT uniform because I got off the shift. Yeah. But I'm working a full-time job, essentially 36 hours a week, and I'm doing it all volunteer because it's not a paid agency. And any other job that I was working 36 hours a week, I'd hate it if I wasn't paid. But this one, I'm working these like full-time job hours without getting paid, and I love it. Like I will wake up at 5:45 in the morning to go into the shift or go for the shift, and I will be excited for it. And I'll be sitting there at the station or doing stuff for 12 hours for a 12-hour shift. And I compare it to like, I used to work at the pizzeria and it was 6-hour shifts, and I like those 6 hours dragged by. Whereas like I'll be there for 12 hours and it'll feel like it's, just an hour or two, because I just love doing it. And so, I definitely definitely a little bit of a geek when it comes to medical stuff. Always kind of have been, but it's gotten a little bit more pronounced over the past couple of years, which, I think it's awesome, because it's like, wow, this is what I want to do with my life. And like, I love doing it. So, but yeah, I have the Grey's Anatomy medical textbook from 1800s in my room, and like I'll just pull it out randomly occasionally, just kind of like scroll, like look through it real quickly, even though I know I'm not going to benefit from all these random words I've never heard of. Like it's just cool to like have it in my hands and like look at the pictures, and like but it's cool to know like one day I will know what that is. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's how I got into medicine. So
that's awesome. I think it's great that you already have your mind set on it and your heart set on it as well, because like you mentioned, so many people, and I mean, not even in medicine, like in any field, they go in thinking, yeah, I grew up wanting this, and they start going to college, they start taking the classes, and then they're like, wow, maybe this isn't for me. Mm-hmm. They spend 3-4 years, maybe they get the degree and they go into the workforce, and then they realize, yeah, I don't want this.
Yeah.
But you're totally different. You have your heart set on it. That's totally awesome. I absolutely commend you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Or they go into a certain career for the wrong reasons.
Right.
And that's also common with people who want to go into medicine, like for the money or the prestige. Mm-hmm. But in reality, it's not really about that, because you'll be $500,000 in debt anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely not about the money.
Yeah. I mean, I was worried that I was just wanted to go into it for the prestige, because I thought it'd be so cool to like one day, tell people I was a doctor. And so I was like a fear of mine that like, what if I don't actually like medicine? I just like the prestige of the profession. But this past year of college, and even like a little bit of high school, has made me realize that I don't want to go into medicine for that. And so, and I've listened to medical podcasts, I've listened to doctors and everything like that, and they all said, and the recurring theme is, if you go into it for the money, you're not going to enjoy it. You might not pass it. You might, because your heart's not going to be there, and your heart needs to be there in order to be a good physician, or to be a good nurse, or to be a good PA, or anything like that. Because when people's lives are in your hands, you can't just be in it for the money. You have to be in it for them. And so that's something that I've found that that's what I want to do.
So why have you determined that you want to be a doctor instead of another healthcare worker, like a physician assistant, nurse practitioner, just a standard nurse?
I think for me it was probably just.
All right, so we're kind of running out of some camera batteries, so just give the viewers some advice if they're going into medicine or your major or just college in general.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think this applies to literally anything. It's helpful for medicine and college and high school, but literally anything. Is what I was talking about earlier. Two things you need to do in order to be successful is, first off, take pride in every piece of work that you produce and every little thing that you do. Because when you take pride in it, then you're going to put your effort into it, and you're going to devote time and skill and energy and everything like that into it, and you're going to produce good works, whatever you're producing.
Yeah.
And whether that's like a very small thing, like creating a Christmas card, or if it's like a very big thing, like trying to attain your career goal. Either way it works. And then the second piece of advice I also talked about already is make goals for yourself, which is one that's said a lot, but it's the importance of it cannot be stressed enough, because without goals, you're just going to be wandering around aimlessly, not really knowing what you're doing. And so by setting goals, creating a schedule for yourself, creating a plan, and getting into a routine of knowing how you're going to solve that or to reach that goal, that's how, when you pair that with putting your effort into everything and taking pride in everything you do, their results are going to come about. So
Yeah, modern day goal setting apps have really failed to save it.
Yeah, I'll tell you after. Yeah, we'll talk about it. All right, well,
yeah, good.
Rocco, thank you so much for coming out. This was a great episode. I'm more into like the mechanical engineering side, so I'm not really like all the medical stuff, but it's awesome hearing how passionate you guys are about this, and I have no doubt that you're both going to do great in the field. So thanks for watching. Hope you guys found some great value in this episode. Be sure to like and subscribe. Still feels weird to say that. But yeah, we have more great episodes coming up very soon, so stay tuned for those. Thank you, and we're out.